when you walk by, I hit you with sexy eyes. You look through me as if I wasn't right. Oh no, you didn't just walk on through. It's time to break it down so you know I'm after you. When I come creeping up behind you, that's me you're feeling, and there's nothing you can do. When I come creeping all around you, you try to resist my advance, but you ain't got a chance. When I come creeping.
Now we have step one done, the layout. I have my plaster sections laid out. I have all my grout lines, both vertical and horizontal, laid out on the sheet. It's time to do the carving. Now, let's talk a little bit about the tools I'm going to be using for this. Let's start off with your cutting tool. What I'm using is a Dremel mounted in a router accessory. Okay. The cutting bit I'm using is a 1/8 inch, what is it, tungsten carbide cutting tip. Okay. I prefer using this bit. You can use some other bits. You know, it depends on your project you're doing. For me, when I'm doing close work, like on these plaster marks, having to route out around the edges of the plaster marks and stuff, this blade does a perfect job with it. If you use a bigger bit than this, and I've experimented with them, I find the wider bits tend to grab hold of the foam more, and you end up with some ripping and some tearing and whatever, to where you don't get that with this. So, you know, this is the bit I choose to do. It takes a little bit longer when you're routering out bigger sections, but gives a little bit cleaner cut, and so on. So, anyway, I got a Dremel in the router base with a cutting bit on it. The other thing I went and did too is I made myself a depth gauge. And all this is a piece of scrap. And what I'm going to be doing when I'm doing my carving, I'm actually doing kind of a 3D effect. The grout lines will be my deepest cut. The brick will be a little closer to the surface than the grout lines, and then the plaster is the surface. And what I wanted to do is I'm not constantly having to measure every time I'm moving from the grout line to the brick, is I made a small depth gauge. When I found the depth I wanted for the grout line, I cut a line on the block. Then when I found the right depth I wanted for the brick, I cut that line on the block. And now every time I have to change the depth of my bit on my router, all I have to do is just hold this up, slide the bit over the line I need, and then raise the bit up to that depth or lower it down to that depth. You know, that way with each panel I do, I'll be sure that my grout lines and my brickwork are at the exact depth from panel to panel with no problem. Now, and you only use that when you're changing depth on your bit, so you don't need that on your worktable. Something else that you're going to need while you're doing your carving on your foam board, you're going to need some way of getting rid of the waste other than blowing it off with your mouth. You'll get tired of puckering up real quick. You can use a whisk broom, which I have done in the past. It works just fine. I would not recommend trying to use your hands. You know, when you're doing the grout lines and stuff, your fingers can't get into the lower, skinnier section. So you need a broom or an air line. I got this hooked up to an air compressor, and it just shoots out a blast of air. And it works perfectly for blowing the shavings and stuff out of the small lines and small areas and keeping your space clear. You know, every so often you're going to need to kind of blow things out. So I keep both the broom and the whisk broom and the air hose handy. I use the air hose for large areas, and I use the whisk broom for small areas, you know, depending on what I'm doing. Let's also talk safety. Depending on whether you have respiratory problems or you know, how much you're getting hit in the face while you're cleaning and stuff, you might want to go down and get an air mask to put on. Comes in real handy so you're not sucking on shavings, because the shavings go everywhere. The other thing is eye protection. I do recommend getting a pair of goggles and what have you. After a while, if you've been carving all day long, you're going to find your face is getting hit with it, no matter how much you're careful. But your face will get hit with shavings and stuff, and it'll get into your eyes, into your nose, into your mouth. This protects your nose and mouth. Goggles protects your eyes, because it's annoying as all hell having to pick foam out of your eyes. So I recommend a pair of eye goggles too. So now with that, we're ready to actually start some carving. Now what I'm going to do first, the first section on here, first pieces I'm doing on here for carving is whatever is going to be your lowest. You always want to start with your deepest cut first. Okay, for this project and this layout, that's my grout line. So I'm going to start out and I'm going to go over the whole board, get all my grout lines carved off. Now, another thing too, before I start cutting, I should go over. When I'm doing these brick lines, I'm basically following the lines, or trying to follow the lines I drew on the board. If I go outside the line and make it a little bit bigger than what I have drawn, it's no worries. Basically because this is supposed to look like an old wall. And if you look at old walls, the grout lines aren't all perfectly straight. They're irregular and what have you. So having, you know, going outside the line every so often actually adds to the look of the piece. So, and then plus when you get into the detail work, you're going to blur the lines a little bit more anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Okay, you've been shown how things are laid out, and you just got done seeing me do the grout lines. Doesn't look half bad. Starting to look like some bricks. Now that's step 2. Step 1 was layout. Step 2 on this project was doing the grout lines. Now the next step is doing the bricks.